In 2007, one of Nickelodeon's best shows at the time, Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide, came to an abrupt end after the third season finished airing on June 8th. The show was pinned to have a spin-off following the three main characters throughout high school, but that show never came to fruition. It's one of our favorite childhood shows was quickly just left in the dust, and a lot of us were left wondering, what happened to Ned's Declassified?
Done saying I'm done playing. Last time it's on the outro. Stuck in the house, need to get out more. I've been stacking up like I'm fundraising. Most people in my position get complacent. Come places with star girls. End up on them front pages. I'm quiet with it, I just ride with it.
In 2003, Scott Fell's brainchild, Ned's Declassified, aired its original pilot episode on September 7th. This pilot seems to be impossible to find now, but it supposedly did not have most of the main characters that ended up being in the final version of the show. A whole year later, the version that we all fell in love with aired on the night of Sunday, September 12th, 2004 on Teen Nick. The show featured Devin Werkheiser as the main character, Ned Bigby, Lindsay Shaw as Jennifer Mosley, or Mose, and Daniel Curtis Lee as Simon Nelson Cook, or Cookie. The plot of the show was pretty open-ended. The viewers followed the main characters throughout their daily middle school lives, and each episode covered a different middle school-related topic in a comedic way, whether it was sports, popularity, a school dance, so on and so forth, but each topic was considered an entry or tip in Ned's survival guide. I vividly remember watching the show from the start and thinking it was the funniest thing on earth. As a kid, in my final years of elementary school at the time, the idea of a funny survival guide to get through middle school was right up my alley, so I was most definitely a big fan of Ned's Declassified. My favorite characters had to be Cookie and Coconut Head. Cookie was the really nerdy kid who always was just trying to keep up with his good friend Ned, and this pursuit would almost always end up getting him into some pretty sticky situations. And yes, he was basically the only black character. And Coconut Head was similar to Cookie, except not as smart and had the worst luck of just about anyone.
Hey, Coconut Head, could you call me Jennifer instead of Mose, please? You got it, Jennifer. And, do you think you could stop calling me Coconut Head? Get a decent haircut and we'll talk.
In hindsight, Coconut Head reminds me of Butters from South Park. Sweet kid, just trying to fit in, ends up biting off more than he can chew, and has awful luck. Mose was the token girl of the group who could be kind of a tomboy at times, but had plenty of her girly moments. Mose ultimately kept Cookie and Ned in check. And then there was, of course, Ned. The main character who the show was centered around, Ned was the likable, charismatic leader of the group who was always getting everyone into more than they could handle. Ned's Declassified ran for 3 seasons and basically covered the main character's entire journey throughout middle school. It was like a kid's sitcom 2.0. Fast-paced, quick cuts, no laugh track, and a bunch of sound effects. If you think about it, a lot of big YouTubers today who are in their 20s probably grew up watching Ned's Declassified, and I think it influenced the style of a lot of people's videos today. Keeping the camera close up on the actors, the fast-paced editing, the heavy use of sound effects, all those things go into YouTube vlogs today. But anyway, after the characters were done with middle school, Nickelodeon figured the show no longer needed to continue with new episodes. It was on the air for 3 years, and Nick also mentioned the fact that kids have short attention spans and inevitably will move on to new shows. At the time, I was not happy with the fact that the show had come to an end, but in hindsight, Nick was right. It's better to end a production a bit early rather than a bit late, mainly because producing a TV show is not cheap. And it's nice to have only good memories instead of having a bunch of tainted memories towards the end of a show's life when they should have just ended it. So in 2007, Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide had come to a close. Now, a year later, Devin Werkheiser had signed a development contract with Nick for a spin-off that would basically be a high school version of the show. Unfortunately, this never went into production because the other main characters were too busy with other projects. It's unfortunate it didn't happen, but at the same time, I get it. I'm sure they wanted to branch away from the show and start making a name for themselves instead of just being known as the kids from Ned's Declassified. So what did the main characters end up doing? Well, Lindsay Shaw ended up taking a role in a sitcom on CW called Aliens in America, which only ran for 1 season, and then a year later she was in ABC Family's 10 Things I Hate About You, which also ran for 1 season, and since then she's continued to have pretty minor roles in various shows and movies. One of her most noteworthy roles was playing Paige McCullers in Pretty Little Liars from 2011 through 2017. Daniel Curtis Lee left Nick to take a role on the Disney Channel. He was Kojo on Zeke and Luther for 3 years, as well as having a minor role on Good Luck Charlie in 2011. In 2012, he was on Glee for a few episodes, and since then, similar to Lindsay Shaw, just minor roles on lesser-known productions. Also, he's making music now. And for Devin Werkheiser, basically the same story. smaller productions, making music, and he's making videos on YouTube if you're interested in hearing from him. By the way, his voice hasn't changed much from Ned, but not in a bad way. It's just kind of crazy that all these years later, he still sounds more or less the same, just a bit older. Ned's Declassified will go down as one of my favorite childhood shows. I was way more into cartoons, so this was definitely my favorite sitcom as a kid. I'm curious to know what you guys think of Ned's Declassified. Favorite characters, favorite episodes? Leave all that down in the comments below, as well as any requests for who you'd like to see featured in a future episode of What Happened To. That's going to do it for this episode of What Happened To. If you enjoyed this at all, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to see every new episode.